you doing, everybody? This is Mike Goldstein, stickers of the C.A.N Report. Nozzle top, everybody. It is June and is also Men's Mental Health. And I have a new friend that I met online, Jen Weaver. She's out of Rhode Island. And we started talking about mental health and everything about it and what she does for us. She is in the field helping first responders. And I have her on the program today, and I'm super excited to talk about what she does and how she helps all of us. Jen, thank you so much for being on the C.A.N Report.
Thank you for having me on here. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. This is great. Like I was saying to Jen earlier, we've had a lot of firefighters on recently. It's nice to mix it up. And like I said earlier, it is mental health awareness, and pretty much every day should be mental health awareness. But this month specifically is. So I thought we can really talk about that since the month is winding down. And it's a pleasure to have you. I love that you're Rhode Island. I love we got New England in the house.
Yep.
And I'm excited to see what we can talk about and what you bring to the table to help us understand our minds a little bit more.
Cool.
All right. We're going to jump into your bio real quick. Jen Weaver. Jennifer Weaver is a licensed psychotherapist and graduate professor based out of Rhode Island. With more than 20 years in the behavioral health field with a concentration in forensics and trauma, Jen specializes in the mental wellness of first responders. When not seeing individual patients, Jen is training or speaking with first responders, both state and nationwide. Jen is the owner of Polaris Counseling and Consulting, and that is that. Thank you so much, Jen. I am so happy to have you on the program tonight. Everybody, if you haven't yet, please click subscribe, like my program so we know we can keep this going. Lets me know I'm doing pretty well and that you're liking the content. Jen Weaver, let's get this going.
Yes. Okay, cool, let's go.
So first off, you were just telling me that you did a live burn.
I did have the luxury of working with a lot of first responders, particularly firefighters in Rhode Island, who either have 20, 30 years in the field or are right out of the academy. So the state academy allowed me to come down and do a live burn. I thought I was observing the live burn just to kind of see what everyone kind of gets into during academy. And instead I ended up being in a live burn and holding a hose and putting out a fire. So it was a full day.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Exciting is a word for it.
Yeah.
It definitely helped me. It definitely helped me understand, because it's interesting to see all these individuals sort of lined outside the live burn, pumped, just amped to go into this burning building. And my gut instinct is not to be pumped or amped at all. It's to get in my Volvo and leave. Right.
Right.
So there's this dichotomy of just very different personalities. And the profile for first responders, I think, is quite specific to you guys.
Yeah, it's a different makeup for sure. Again, it's not normal for people to run into a building. Right. It's just like it's not normal to jump out of an airplane. Right. Those are really two big things, right? Same thing with police. You normally, when people are firing at you, you run the other way. So, in the military, it's all that same thing. It's that is not a normal human response. We're not supposed to run towards the danger. We're supposed to run away from it. But I love that you got to experience it. And you said that you probably will never do that again. And
I'm not inclined to do it again. It was a really cool experience. I went through 50% of my air in about 6 minutes. The feedback I got from a bunch of the guys there was they couldn't believe how sweaty I was. So yeah, it was intense. And I think we need you. We need you. We don't need me to do it.
Now, in that live burn, was it a propane fed building, or were you actually using combustible materials?
No, it was a propane fed building.
Wow. So
which I knew, but my intellect could not override that.
Now imagine, and I'm sure they talked about it, when you're in an actual flashover simulator that a lot of the academies have, where you're using combustible materials. So you actually get to see the fire behavior. You're sitting at 800-degree temperatures, and that fire is like right here, just rolling above your head. And that's, if you've never done it before, that's when you're really going to start sweating and breathing down that bottle, because if you're not used to it, or if you're not comfortable with that environment, because you start breathing that hot air, your bottle is getting hot, right? And so that hot air is now in your face, and it can freak some people out.
Sure. Yeah, no, I was freaked out with the propane, so I don't know that I'm gonna escalate my experience to the next step.
And I love that you got that experience. I think is fantastic that people do. I think more people should, especially the therapists who are helping first responders to understand what we're going through, the physical challenge and the mental challenge of trying to not freak out, as it were, in our gear
Right.
in those environments. Because now that you've got to witness that, you are wearing a spacesuit, you
Mhm.
are have this mask on your face that's restricting your vision. You're not breathing like we're breathing now. It's pretty kind of restricted as well. It's blowing into your face. And then the movements are constricted. And then you
Right.
have everything else along with it. And now the gear is weighing you down. You got a heavy hose line, and then you
Mhm.
got this high heat. And that's a lot. That's a lot you have to
It's a
train your
lot.
mind and body to overcome and not freak out.
Yeah, it's intense, and I think, if you have the adrenaline to do that, right, that's kind of where people are able to override that intensity. I don't think your average therapist has the adrenaline or the need for that adrenaline, right? So I love a ride along though. I love a ride
Yeah.
along. I love to stay in the back of the engine, mind my business, drink my iced coffee, um, and let all the chaos kind of ensue around me. I don't love running
And
into fire.
now, why did you? So you got invited for this, or did you ask to be a part of this?
I got invited.
Okay.
I was talking about how I've gotten to experience a lot of what the fire occupation looks like in Rhode Island, and the academy was one piece I had not been able to broach. And I was talking about that in front of a firefighter friend of mine, and he said, "Why don't you come down and we'll show you?" So
Hmm.
I've been lucky that I think the guys around here, around at least around here, have embraced the concept of sort of immersing a clinician into the field, because it is as a non firefighter, right? It's really hard for me to completely understand, but I want to understand as much as I can, right? So if I can get as much experience, as much exposure, if I can be in ride-alongs, if I can be in the stations, the research shows that the immersion approach works, right? Not only does it bring in a clinician who starts to understand as much as they can without being a first responder, but it also allows the guys to be exposed to mental health in a way that potentially removes the taboo, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I'm not this concept of a person. I'm this person that's in the station with you. And even if you don't want to work with me, but you're comfortable with me, you may be comfortable with my referrals or people that I think you'd work really well with. So it sort of removes this veil that I think is between first responders and clinicians, and this ability to, rather than you coming to us coming to you.
I like that. It actually it pays off a lot because I can tell you from personal experience, the EAPs they don't work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Firefighters don't like them. First
Sure.
responders don't like them because it's a sterile kind of environment. We don't know who the
Mm-hmm.
person is. We don't know who we're getting because when we reach that level where we need to talk to somebody, we kind of want to talk to somebody that we know or at least has a
Sure.
vested interest in what we do. And again, my personal experience when I was handed a pamphlet, it was a very it was with no emotion. The
Sure.
deputy chief who gave me the information, he just slid it across his desk and said, "If you need to talk to somebody, here's an EAP." And that was probably the most sterile thing you could ever do to anybody. It was
Sure.
just had no feeling. It was just nothing. And
Right.
for if I know who the person is, I like, you know what, I Jen gets it. Jen gets what we're doing. I want to talk to her. And like you said, if you're tied up or if you're busy or the schedule is completely filled, at least you know who I am, and I can say you
Mhm.
can say, Mike, I'm going to refer you to so and so because I know what kind of person you need to talk to. Instead of me walking
Sure.
into an environment, and because this happens a lot, where guys walk in and they sit down and they go, "Yep, this person's not going to help me." Literally,
Absolutely.
like I could tell in the first 5 minutes, this person doesn't get me. This person doesn't want to be here, and it's that can just all of a sudden just breaks us down again and go, you know, screw it. We'll just keep it all inside
Mhm.
and wait till something bad happens.
Yeah, and we had the unfortunate ability to have kind of a cool experience this past weekend. We had a mass casualty event, and there was a pediatric death involved, and one of the departments that I work really closely with called me while the guys were still on the scene and said, "Are you available tonight? Can you just come to the station?" Like, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't believe in group hot washes from a clinical standpoint. I believe in them for a strategic standpoint, but I don't believe in them for a clinical standpoint. I think they potentially re-traumatize other people in the group, right?
Mm.
So my approach is very different. I kind of hang out in the station, and if anyone wants to pull me aside, and I got pulled aside by 13 members.
Wow.
So they were coming in, they were debriefing, they were showering, they were eating dinner, they were going home, they were calling their families, but I was there, and I already had relationships with most of the people on that shift. So it allowed a different approach. The research has shown that when we put people in a group and we have them walk through everything they heard at the event, everything they smelled at the event, everything they saw at the event, we find that tends to have a negative impact on mental health. But when we let people process it individually at first and then come together for a group further down the road, that tends to have a better impact on things like acute stress disorder and PTSD.
Hmm. Wow. You're giving us a lot of thought. I love that. That helps a lot. Like you're trying to relive that moment within that specific time frame really does suck. It just
Mhm.
makes it a lot worse. And
Well,
we've
and
I
also
might have
if sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, and also like if, for example, with a pediatric death, if you maybe didn't hear something the parents said, but you're feeling really stressed out about the event, and now you're sitting in that circle, and now you start to hear things that the parents said, that potentially adds to your trauma exposure rather than
Mm.
treats your trauma exposure.
Well, I never really thought about that before. That totally makes sense. It's just great that also, like you said, like the whole group hot wash. Like we do it a lot in my department, but we do it for tactic wise.
Mhm.
What could we have done better? What tools did we use or not use? Whatever the event is, but we do gather together and we do talk about it. But when it's actually a fatal, tragic event, though, when it comes to the mental health part of it, we definitely do a great job with reaching to the outside of our critical stress debriefing team, and they come in and it's not mandatory either, which I
Mhm.
excuse me, which I like. I don't
Agreed.
know what your thoughts on it is that I don't want it to be mandatory because if again, it's hard enough for us to talk about our feelings, but when you're trying to make it mandatory, it's like working out. When someone says you have to work out, you know what I'm going to do? No, because I'm an alpha male, and you're not going to tell me when
Right,
and
right.
when I can do something. It's the same thing with talking about my feelings. I'm not going to be told when I have to talk about my feelings. I'll talk about my
Mhm.
feelings when I'm damn good and ready. So that's how a lot of guys feel. And then when you put them in a group, what do? They sit in a circle and they shut down. They cross their
Right,
arms and they sit there and wait for it to be over. So I do love
right.
the fact that you said like the hot washes together, clinically wise, does not work.
Mhm. Yeah, the data doesn't support it. And we know that people process in different ways, right? So some people want to process in a group setting. Some people have significant others that work in the field that they can go home and debrief with. Some people just want to go home and hug their kids.
Mm-hmm.
Some people want to sit on it for 72 hours and then call me. So I had 13 members pull me aside, but I also had 3 members call me 3 days later. So
Wow.
people process things in different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some people need to sit with things, and I understand the urgency to make sure everyone's okay, but no one's okay. No one in that moment is okay. So whether you're immediately speaking about it or you're speaking about it 72 hours later, no one that night was okay.
Right.
And I think we could say that pretty much across the board.
Absolutely. And what I like too is the fact that you're visiting the firehouses and getting to
Mhm.
know these people, because it also helps to understand our mentality, our dark humor.
Right.
I've said it a couple times before where our stories are pretty dark and morbid and graphic,
Mhm.
and some people don't understand them. So we're usually going to stand in like at a party. We're usually standing in a corner by
Right.
ourselves, talking with other guys in the field because our
Mhm.
humor is going to be that dark kind of morbid humor, and everybody
Right.
else has kind of gotten a sick stomach from what we're talking about. And even on the field, when people see us smiling and
Mhm.
laughing, the passerbys, they're gonna and they got their cell phones out and they're taking
Mhm.
their video and taking the pictures out of context, and they see a group of firefighters laughing and joking around, and there's a vehicle that's completely mangled with a dead body inside of it with a blue tarp draped over it. That's a bad day. And I said before, we can't stand on scene, thinking these horrible, deep feelings,
Right.
because now we're not going to be ready for the next call. So usually we don't even know we're doing it, but we usually just start making light of something. And it
Hmm.
helps us to be able to recuperate and be able to move on to that next event, because we can't go home. We got a
Right.
24-hour or 48-hour shift. And if I'm going to be in this dark mindset and depressed because this person lost their life, I can't be ready for the next person who needs me. So
Right.
a lot of people don't understand that, and they see us standing there joking around, and some of them get pissed off, but it's not because we don't care. It's because we got to get out in a better mindset. Do you talk about that with other people?
Yeah, well, so my background, I worked in child protective services 20 years ago, and I lasted about a year and a half. And then I went to the prison. I went and worked in the prison facilities here in Rhode Island as a therapist for about a decade before I went into private practice. And there's this similar need for desensitization in those fields, right? You are not effective if you are absolutely beside yourself sobbing at the scene of an accident.
Yep.
So while laughing may seem crass, you're actually far more effective if you are emotionally regulating. That doesn't mean there's not a time and place for crying. That just means in the moment is not the time and place for crying. And I have a 3.5-year-old. I had an emergency C-section. So I was kind of in and out, but my surgeon was listening to Nelly while she was performing the C-section. And that's not because I don't think she cared about me or my well-being or the life of my son. I think it's because she needed to emotionally regulate so that she could be effective.
Absolutely.
Right. So,
Yep.
so I think when we are able to pull ourselves back, it doesn't mean that we don't care. It's that it means that we recognize that in order to be effective, we need to be emotionally regulated. If you walked in to see a therapist tomorrow and she was sitting on the couch and she was crying, saying, "Sorry, I'm having a terrible day," that would freak you out. You would say, like, listen, I need you to be
Yeah.
stable. I'm coming to you. I need you to be stable. So listen, when I call 911, I need you guys stable. I need you as
Absolutely.
effective
I
as
love it.
possible. So it matters.
It matters 100%. I couldn't agree more. That you paint a perfect picture on that too. If I show up at somebody's doorstep and I am disheveled, I'm distraught, I look like I'm about to cry, or I just don't want to talk to anybody, and I go in sulking, man, that's not a good day for that person, because they're not going to get the
Right.
best of Mike.
Right.
And they
Absolutely.
expect that. They don't care about the previous call. Man, if I walked in the house and go, yeah, sorry, I just cleared up from a scene. We just had a double fatality. One was a 2-year-old,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
the mom lost her life as well. They're not going to want to hear that, because now I've just depressed the whole room, and now I've also just taken whatever's going on with them and I pushed that aside. And
Right.
honestly, they called 911 because they had a problem that we have to fix for them, whether it's a medical call, whether it's another motor vehicle accident call.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's tough for us to clear our heads for that, but making light of a situation, not of the person, but just making some kind of humor out of
Yeah.
something that we can find, whether it's a dude who slipped off the truck, and and we can make
Hmm.
fun of him. And
Hmm.
um man, I have some morbid jokes I would love to tell right now, but I probably not. But there was, for us, like, I had experienced a lot of tragic motor vehicle accidents in my lifetime,
Hmm.
being on the job. And um, we had to stand there and just make light of something. Something happened, and it was a funny joke, and it made it much, much better.
Hmm.
So I do love the fact that you take the time to understand our minds and getting to know the firefighters in the firehouse, so that way you're not blindsided when they're talking to you and they're saying something that
No.
just might seem completely off shelf.
Hmm. No, there's healing in that, right? And there's protection in that. And we use humor for a reason. And humor's not meant to be disrespectful in a lot of cases. Humor's meant to protect us and heal. And there's time and place for it. But I think firefighters get similar feedback when we see you in bumper time, right? When we see you sitting in the bays or sitting in the trucks outside, sometimes people who live within your municipality may drive by and think that you're getting paid to do nothing. No, what you're doing is protecting against things like PTSD. You're
Absolutely.
protecting against things like substance abuse and domestic violence at home. So when you guys are engaging in bumper time, we see significantly lower rates of domestic violence in your homes. We see significantly lower rates of substance abuse. And we actually see people who are more inclined to go to therapy. So firefighters are more inclined to go to therapy when someone who works with them is previously in therapy. So when
Oh,
someone on
absolutely.
says, I go to therapy, this is my therapist, you're more likely to go. If I can get you guys sitting outside, the research shows if you are sitting outside in your bays, in your trucks, in your recliners, whatever you are doing, we have better, safer communities. And people don't
I love it.
understand that, but it's true.
Yeah, I'm living the life. I could tell you 100% is true. And
Mm-hmm.
we feel comfortable because we're talking to each other. We're just having a regular conversation, enjoying the sunset, watching cars and life drive by. And as we're talking, somebody says, yeah, I can't go hang out tomorrow. I have to go see my therapist. And that's usually when we're like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you go see a therapist? Yeah, I go see a therapist. What are you seeing a therapist for? And whether they want to talk about it or not,
Yep.
I just found out
Removes the
like this
stigma.
guy that, yeah, removes the stigma. He says it's okay. And that's why it's important. And I talk about it constantly is because we got to remove that stigma. And we're constantly losing way too many people because we still have that stigma that we don't talk about it. And unfortunately, Rhode Island is hit pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
The Providence area, especially, was hit way
Yep.
too hard, and their fire department
Mm-hmm.
losing guys because of this. Now,
Yep.
I asked this question before for other people, and I never really could get an answer. I don't expect one from you either, but this is like
Mm-hmm.
a blanket question. We never know the answer why. I'm
Yep.
a why guy. I want to know the answer why. I
Mm-hmm.
want to know why fire acts a certain way. I want to know why the water needs to be applied in a certain direction. I want to know why the hydraulic tools work when I do all these questions. But when it comes to
Right.
suicide,
Mm-hmm.
that's my big why. I want to know
Yep.
why they're doing it because I never get that closure. I never understand the reason why. We hear the information that somebody else took their life for whatever reason. The
Mm-hmm.
families know why, but the brothers and sisters sometimes don't know why. And I understand it's that's a private thing, but it's
Sure.
like when we do, we have our critical stress debriefing, or when somebody dies in the line of duty, we have a huge NIOSH report. It is a like 20-page document of how everything went. We knew what he had for breakfast, and then we knew how he jumped off the truck, and then what happened with that
Mm-hmm.
call, and that's why he died on line of duty. But we never know the reason why this particular person took their life. Was it
Sure.
financial? Was it marital problems? Was it PTSD to a call? Was it workplace trauma? All these things, and we never get to see the reports on that. Have you ever
Mm-hmm.
looked deeper into that?
As far as the reason why or the reports?
I guess all of it.
Okay. So I think, listen, human beings want whys, right? And firefighters specifically are tasked with figuring out problems and solving them. So we make it doubly hard for you, right? But one of the things we know is that you are using a rational mind to try to understand the irrational, which means you never will, right? One,
Yep.
one of the things we know is that while suicide may be planned, and we know this from survivors, right? We know while suicide may be planned for weeks, months, or years, the decision to act on it usually occurs within 10 minutes of the attempt. So we know that the decision to act on it leading to the attempt is usually rather impulsive. So someone may wake up saying today's going to be the day, but the decision to actually go through with it, right? To close that garage door, to make sure that your family leaves, whatever it may be, usually occurs within about 10 minutes of the attempt. So we know from survivors that it is rather impulsive. We know that survivors will normally tell us their only reason was I saw no other option in their irrational moment, right? They may, if they survive, they may years later say, now I see all the options. But in that moment, they'll say, I don't see any options. And when you say, like, is it finances? Is it this? Is it that? It's unlikely that it's one thing. There may be one event that causes someone to be more impulsive, but it's unlikely that it's one thing. And the research currently coming out is showing a lot about CTE in firefighters, and the idea that the frontal lobe is damaged in a lot of firefighters. Like, I'm not sure if you've ever hit your head at work, whether during a drill or, in the field.
Jen, I've hit my head. I lost count of how many times I've hit my head.
Yeah. Then throw military into it, throw high school and college sports into it, right? Throw just like men fighting when they're 12, because for whatever reason, you guys just punch each other. And then we're looking at this cumulative effect of frontal lobe damage, right? And we see this in football players. When football players are diagnosed with CTE, we see the likelihood of them dying by suicide increase. And we're seeing this with firefighters as well. And we know this is your impulse control center. We know this is where you make decisions. And if we are impacting this, plus adding trauma, plus potentially adding childhood trauma, maybe marital stress, maybe financial stress, there probably isn't one reason. It's that the person decides it's the only option for anything.
Interesting. Yeah, that's tough. Again, like you said, like we are the why people. We are the problem fixers.
Sure.
And that's sometimes that does keep me up at night when I hear another brother or sister took their life. That's my whys was what's going on. How could we have fixed this? Why, that's our job, and now it's broken, and I can never get it back. So, it's a question I ask all the time when I hear it, and it definitely, I think it bothers a lot of other guys and girls out there too, that we keep losing these people for whatever reason, and sometimes it is that closure. Maybe it's selfish, maybe it's not, but like we as humans need closure. It's the same
Yeah.
time when, like, as in the EMS field, we drop a patient off. There's a lot of times we don't hear back whether they made it or not. And some departments are pretty good with giving us a follow up and letting us know, like, they got a stint put in and they're doing great, or, unfortunately they didn't make it, and then, we still applaud ourselves for the hard work we did because we made it to the hospital. But it's the same thing on that line. Is the suicide effect of it is it still hurts us. And I've been pretty blessed with knowing a lot of people in this field who speak openly about their struggles. And one of my favorite people, Tom Hollick, he out of Texas, he had lost a member on his department. And he talks about the spiral that he went down because of this issue and how deeply affected him. And he now does a presentation on it, and he speaks very well and very openly about how that why bothered him. Like, why would this happen? And that he can't fix it. And he was hurting himself and his family and realized he couldn't do that anymore. Same thing with another gentleman, Nate Sturm. Both of them talk openly about their struggles of losing members on their department and how it's amazing how it affects us so deeply. And we get in that hole where we can't pull ourselves out. But, we need to be there for our departments and our families. And again, we do struggle with that why, and we want to fix it.
And the reality is, like, oftentimes there's not a fix because the why is not one thing. It's not one thing that somebody can change.
So yeah, it's a tough subject. It's a lot to go through. So for me, my biggest struggle, and what I'd love to talk with you about too, is it's become more of the forefront. And I love that people are speaking more openly about it, is the workplace PTSD, the PTSD inside of our walls, not the stuff we've seen, but dealing with toxic leadership, dealing with people who should care about us, but don't. Our captains, our chiefs, even senior guys, bullying inside the firehouse. That really affects a lot of people really, really deeply. And for me, it really affected me. And like you said before, childhood trauma sometimes it will trigger that effect. And for me, I had that growing up. I had a lot of childhood trauma, and in dealing with workplace PTSD with a toxic leadership, that messed me up a lot. Do you deal a lot with people who have those same issues?
I would say more first responders come to therapy to talk about interpersonal stuff within the workplace than they do to talk about calls.
All right. I'm not alone.
It doesn't mean they're not processing calls here. Yeah, they're coming to talk to me about the workplace. And it's interesting because, listen, I can have coworkers that I don't necessarily want to have lunch with, that I'm not super close with. My life doesn't depend on it though. Right? So, like, you have a job where your life depends on trusting the people you work with in life or death situations sometimes. And to know that you were in a life or death situation with someone who you don't feel completely safe with, maybe not from a physical standpoint, but from a psychological standpoint, that can really affect somebody. And I think we sell the fire service as a brotherhood. And when that's not happening, that really affects people. And that's why people end up in therapy. I'm telling you, they're coming to talk about their significant others and their coworkers. That they're not coming to talk about calls. Guys can compartmentalize those calls. Everyone has a few calls in their career that stick with them, but that's not what they're coming to talk to me about. The other interesting thing is this movement towards upward mobility within the structure that's in the firehouse, right? And I think you're going to get two types of people. I think you're going to get people who would be really fantastic leaders, but because they love their coworkers and the work so much, they're hesitant to move up. And then I think you're going to get people who are very, very focused on the title, and as a result want to move up, And obviously there's people in between as well, right? There's some great leaders and healthy leaders. But I think we're seeing some people who would be incredibly empathetic and sympathetic and great teachers that are not allowing themselves to rise up amongst the ranks because they are afraid of the toxicity that's within the workplace.
Oh, you nailed it. Absolutely. I mean, it's clear you've done your homework. It's clear that you're definitely talking to a lot of the same people that I work with, and I've met in the field. And honestly, you probably talk to people who are just like me, because when I was seeing a therapist, it was the same thing. I talked about work. That was why I went in there, was because of
Mhm.
work. It literally had nothing to do from the calls that I've seen. And I've always, the way I word it is, I can compartmentalize all those tragic calls
Yeah.
because I don't take them personally. So if someone's swearing at me, if someone's they're going to spit at me, or again, even if it's a fatal, it's not my family. It's
Mhm.
or it's a stranger that is yelling at me because they've just experienced the most tragic event in their life that they think might be tragic. It might be a stub toe, but to them it's tragic, and they're mad, and they might be mad because either we might not take them to the hospital or the police were treating them like crap, and they're going to yell and scream at us. I don't take it personally because I know that they don't know who I am. They can call me every name in the book. It doesn't matter because they don't know who I am. But when I have somebody that I trust on that level inside my firehouse, that's what makes me break down. That's what hurts
Sure.
me and makes me now feel like crap. And now I need to go talk to somebody. It's an abuse of trust that I think a
Mhm.
lot of people in the fire business, because trust is a big thing. Like you said, we signed up for the brotherhood, we signed up for the sisterhood, we signed up for a new family. And when you have people in those higher positions that you trust break it, it's like your mom or your dad, breaking that trust. And
Mhm.
it's a hard thing to recover from. So it's
Right.
it's amazing. It makes me feel better that I'm not the only one that does it all the time.
No.
Because when I go to see my therapist, usually I would complain about work the whole time, my former work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, and it's a career of identity, right? So, plenty of people have jobs or careers in which they don't identify through, but first responders typically identify through their jobs. It's often one of the first things they share about themselves when they meet new people, because it's part of their identity. And fire service also has the inclination to draw people who are looking to belong, right? Who
mhm.
maybe, listen, as a small child, your parents should have been the two people in the world who made you feel like you belonged, that you could trust yourself, that you could believe in yourself, that what you felt mattered. And some of us are lucky enough to have those parents. I was lucky enough to have those parents, right? Some of us were not lucky enough to have those parents or to have those idyllic situations or to grow up in those environments. And then we become adults who are searching to belong. And the fire service can offer that, right? There's a
Yeah,
family in this. There's a brotherhood, a sisterhood. There's a belonging here. And for some people, that turns out to be true. When there's toxicity within the workplace or there's this abuse of power, right? It sometimes can
yeah,
mimic the abuse of power that you may have experienced as a kid. So now we're bringing up
absolutely.
all this stuff from childhood, and calling the service a brotherhood or a sisterhood then becomes a misnomer.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. You're absolutely right. And now shifting gears, you do a lot with, I notice your online presence is pretty friggin' strong, and I love it because you have a lot of good messages on here. And I was scrolling across your Instagram page. I'm going to try to share it, see if it'll actually work here. I'm trying something new here. So let's see if this works. Sweet. So this one here,
Yeah.
that one's a really good one. I like it very much.
Are possibly born with smaller amygdalas, so they are not as activated when they run into danger, things like burning buildings or emergency situations, but their amygdalas are activated when they're asked to talk about their feelings. And I got a handful of comments where people asked me, well, what about their overexposure to trauma? Is that maybe why their amygdala doesn't activate? Sure. I was talking about amygdalas at birth.
So I think that's fantastic. I love that you touch on that. You have, again, your content is fantastic of what you
Thanks.
present and bring up to a lot of us. And how did you come up with that? How did you start figuring out our brains?
Part of it started with, and this is going to sound terrible. Part of it started because I worked in forensics and corrections, and I loved it. I didn't necessarily love working for the state, but I did love working with people whose brains I really didn't understand because they weren't similar to mine. The occupation closest to working with incarcerated individuals I have found is firefighters. Um,
No offense.
and no offense, no offense. No, it's lovely. There's an ability to speak to and connect with firefighters that I find very authentic and genuine that I don't find in every population. And I became really fascinated with how the brain works. And part of that is that I have some friends who are firefighters and things that they've shared with me, and then stuff that I've heard in session. But I think the live burn was a tipping point for me, right? In the sense that I was so terrified, and these recruits were gnawing at the bit to run into fire, right? And at the same time, when I run trainings with fire departments, I'll have 20 to 40 firefighters in a room. And the second I start to talk about something serious, somebody makes a joke. It's usually off color. It's usually wildly inappropriate. It's usually very funny. We all laugh. And what I have learned with firefighters is we roll with the joke, and then I can kind of get people back, right? Then we can kind of talk about the serious stuff. But there needs to be this oscillating, right? We have to go back and forth between the two. And so I started looking into why are we seeing that in firefighter brains? And we've always known that exposure to trauma shrinks the amygdala. Your amygdala is your flight or fight center. It's your fear center. We've known that exposure to trauma shrinks that for people. And when we shrink it, it doesn't quite activate at times when it should, right? So maybe it doesn't activate when you run into through overexposure to trauma.
Okay.
So you become desensitized to the trauma, whether that's because you experienced trauma as a child, whether it's because you work in a field in which you are exposed to trauma. But there's research coming out at the end of 2024 showing that firefighters may actually be born with smaller than average amygdalas. So there may be individuals who are born to be drawn towards certain careers, like first responders, firefighters, police officers, military, because they may not have their fear center activated when they run towards danger. Their fear center is activated, though, when you ask them to become emotionally vulnerable. And we're seeing their fear centers hyperactive in first responders when you ask them to verbalize their feelings in ways that we don't see other occupations become activated. And some of the feedback I've gotten online is, yeah, but that's men. We don't see it across the board with men, though. While we see men typically become socialized to be less comfortable with emotions than women, we're not seeing the amygdala hyperactivated across the board in males versus females, but we are seeing it in a big portion of first responders.
Wow, that's amazing. And this is something brand new to me. Never heard of this before. It makes complete sense to me of why that would happen. Obviously, I've never even heard of the amygdala. What is it again?
Amygdala.
Amygdala. Everybody say it with us. Amygdala. and man, that's my hat's off to you, Jen, because not only are you really just diving into understanding who we are, but how our brains are working, and to make sure that we're safe and can go home and be better for ourselves. And you talk about that in the other clips about, that we need to talk about our feelings. Like just because we run in burning buildings and we do all these great things, we still need to go home and we actually still need to talk. And that can be at times pretty difficult. I know for me, like I didn't have a very stressful shift, my last shift, but I was tired. I didn't, we don't sleep all that well. People think everybody out there, if you're not a firefighter, if you don't work shifts, they're like, we sleep at night in these beds, but we're not sleeping in our bed. So it's not incredibly comfortable. And like for me, I usually sleep in my clothes because I want to get right up and go to that call. And you have that mindset, that trigger mindset that at any moment, the lights are going to pop on and the tones are going to drop, and now I got to go do something. So it's not a very calming sleep. So when I get home, I'm pretty exhausted. And I was irritable yesterday. My wife's like, "Why? You seem pissy. Why are you so pissy?" I'm tired. And that's the best excuse I can give is I'm tired, but nothing tragic happened. So I didn't really need to talk about anything, but I know there's days when it was a really tough day. And yeah, I'm still not going to talk about it. It's easy for me to talk about someone I don't like, But when it comes to me personally, about something I saw that bothers me, I don't talk about it.
Yeah, and listen, you guys have shockingly high levels of divorce compared to the average population, right? You have
Oh yeah.
shockingly high levels of substance abuse and domestic violence. And most of you have shift sleep disorder. And shift sleep disorder, for anyone who doesn't know, is when your body doesn't produce melatonin naturally on its own when the sun goes down, because your body has no idea when to produce melatonin. Mine knows 10 p.m., sun goes down, produce melatonin, go to sleep. If you have to be up at 3 a.m. and then you sleep for 2 hours and then you're up again at 5 a.m. and then you're supposed to sleep throughout the day and go to bed at 10 p.m., your body doesn't produce melatonin. We see it in new parents with newborns, right? We see it very similar. You probably have shift sleep disorder. What's interesting about shift sleep disorder, coupled with things like trauma and PTSD, is when we autopsy the brain, it looks very similar to people who have died with dementia. So we're seeing a massive impact on brain health when we're talking about disrupted sleep. And I think people who don't work in the fire service don't understand that when you get up at 3 a.m., yes, sometimes it's for a life or death emergency. Sometimes it's because someone has a toothache and they're not sure who to call. And you guys are getting up at 3 a.m. and running to the house, right? We know this. And I'm not trying to tell people not to call for you. But what I am saying is that's why your sleep's disrupted, right? And it's having a massive impact on wellness, which is having a massive impact on families, which is having a massive impact on children. When the children of first responders come to see me when they're 20 years old, they're not coming to see me because their parents ran into burning buildings. They're desensitized to that. They grew up around that. They actually don't think much about it. They come to talk to me about how dad never told them he loved them, or dad wasn't affectionate, or my dad drank a lot, or my dad fought with my mom a lot, or we never saw my dad. He came home and went in the basement and the door was locked.
Yeah.
That's what we see. And we know that men who are stressed tend to work more. They tend to pick up more shifts, thinking that working more will actually de-stress them. That's counterintuitive, though. It doesn't actually work. But we've socialized men as young boys, like, when you're stressed, don't feel the feeling, just go do more work. Just work harder, run faster, be stronger. And as a, the outcome of that is that we then raise a generation of men who works more rather than talking about their feelings.
Wow. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, we're providers. It's ingrained in us, right? Like, that's what we're supposed to do. Is we bring home the bacon and we're supposed to work, and we're not supposed to stop. And that's very difficult to shut your brain off from that. It's very difficult to not want to do that. And again, I've been in that boat where my wife has told me, you need to stop. You need to just relax. Because when I'm at home, I feel guilty when I'm not being productive. And that's what, like you just said, like we will pick up more shifts, especially if we're feeling stressed, and we do all these things. And when I am home, it's very difficult for me to not want to do something. Like, I will sit there and I feel guilty if I spent 5 hours not doing anything. Like, literally, if I watched TV or if I did something else, I'm like, man, I should have been mowing the lawn. I could have gone and done this. I could have gone and done that. And like, and I start beating myself up because I wasn't productive that day.
It's interesting that you see rest as being unproductive. Rest and sleep are not the same thing, right? So we sleep, and sometimes rest is included in that, but we also rest. So sure, you could work and provide for your family and come home and mow the lawn and paint the spare bedroom and grocery shop and then drop dead. And great. You had a super productive few years with your family, and then you pushed yourself so far that you dropped dead and couldn't help them anymore. That happens all the time. Right. We know that's why men are more likely to die from heart attacks. Women are more likely to have heart disease, but men are more likely to die from heart attacks. And it's usually because they die from the heart attacks we call widowmakers. Right. And it's because they continually push themselves. And I think, like, so fantastic. You can have a productive, super productive 5 years for your family, and then you're gone and they have to do everything on their own. So rest matters. Rest keeps people married. It keeps children feeling connected to their parents. It reduces the likelihood of substance use. You are allowed to sit on the couch and binge watch Netflix. It is resting. Now, if you do it every day, it's official. But if you are doing it every day, we call that depression. But if you are doing it periodically because you need to rest, your mind needs to rest, that is productive. you are
Yeah.
being the best version of you for everyone around you.
I love it, man. You're so right. And that's the things I have to remind myself. My wife is very good. She literally says that because she loves looking up all this health stuff. She's a big supporter of Mind Pump. I don't know if you ever listen to those guys, but they talk about how to rebuild your body, and rest is a key of that. And we talk about that also in the fire service, though, too. It's not hidden. It's out there. When we have a lot of our trainings, and there's a lot of YouTube videos out there and Instagram videos, and that they talk about the need for rest. But yet we still feel weak that we shouldn't be doing it. Like what do we do? Like we now we're now overwhelmed with social media as well. And so we see a lot of these things on social media with working out too. So if I'm not working out on a regular basis, I also feel like I'm a pile of crap because I'm not getting my swole on, and I should be getting sweaty, and I should be, being in the most peak level fitness that I can. But I also just worked either at 24 or 48, and now I'm at home, and I feel, again, guilty because I wasn't in the gym, or I missed 2 days in the gym because life got so busy trying to be a good dad, trying to be a provider, or trying to get the rest in, and pushing myself to try to get that exercise in. And like you said, like, you need to repair your body and you need to repair your mind. And like you said, good for you. You got your workout in, you did shopping, you mowed the lawn, but now you just died of a heart attack because you didn't rest.
And listen, your kid is never going to sit on my couch at 25 and say, my dad lost his swole because he skipped 2 days a week. But he absolutely might say, like, my dad wasn't around because getting to the gym was a priority for him over me.
Yeah.
And
100%.
I'm not suggesting people don't work out. You need to keep yourself well, right? Like you have a job that is physical. You need to keep yourself around for the people you love. But we cannot do all things at the same time. So when I'm being a great therapist, I'm not being 100% of a mom. I am in my child's bedroom with his door locked right now, so he can't get to me. He's being supervised, just to be clear. My husband's home. But I have the door locked so he can't break in and get to me. I'm not being the best mom I can be right now. I'm not being the best wife I can be right now. I'm not being the best friend I can be right now because I'm doing this right now. So we can do all things. We just can't do it all at the same time. And we used to ask men to go and be providers. And there was a person in your life who would take care of all the other things. And gender roles have switched, and we don't see that as much anymore. We expect you to be an involved parent. We expect you to be an involved partner. Because we've evolved as human beings, right? So to expect you to be the sole provider and then also to be 100% of these other things, you can't do it all at the same time. It's not reasonable.
I love it. Now, with new age and things have changed, and more data out there, there's been a big push for CBD to help with sleep. Have you done any studies for relaxation and for us to be able to sit at home and to be able to get our minds right with those type of new products out there?
The research I've done is anecdotal, so I can tell you what I'm seeing with patients, not anything that I've done. CBD works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. Some people find it incredibly calming. Some people find that it has a placebo effect. In Rhode Island, it's becoming increasingly popular to microdose with psilocybin. So to microdose with mushrooms. Again, if you feel high from that, you're just overdosing on mushrooms, not microdosing. There's a patient today was telling me about THC drinks and how he swears by them. It's legal in Rhode Island. So I think there is a lot of new research that we're doing to find ways. My only caution with CBD and THC with firefighters is you've all probably ingested enough into your lungs. So maybe find a different way to consume the product rather than, you guys probably don't need to have any more smoke in your lungs than you already have.
Well, they have the drops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tincture.
So there's the drops. Yeah, exactly. So there's those. There are the gummies. There's pills as well. So there's been a big movement in a new product, and it's been pushing more towards the first responders to help us hopefully be more calm and get better sleep.
And also, I think going home and recognizing you're off duty, and I don't mean from a you're going to be listening for the tones even when you're not at work, but I mean, like, you don't have to be the problem solver and fixer in every situation in your life. You can go home and you can slide into the role that you have within that house. And if you are lucky enough to have a partner and a family, that means it's not your job to still be on alert at all times at the house. You have people around you who also can carry the load.
That's a tough one. That is
Yeah.
tough though, to be able to understand that, and understand that we need to let our significant others do the job too. They want to do it. There's times where they really do want to do it.
Right.
And they'll tell you flat
Right.
out, it's like, stop it. No, I got this. When you're not at work, I mean, when you're not home, you're on a shift for 24 or 48. Who do you think's doing the bulk of the work? So when you come home, you don't have to, again, it's that guilt thing. Like, oh no, I was at work, and you're having to deal with the kids. But usually the response back is, yeah, you were at work. Exactly. You were working. It wasn't like you were just hanging out. Well, we are kind of sometimes just hanging out, but we were also busy. So they understand that. The good spouses really do understand, like, okay, you came off shift, relax. I got this.
And also, your spouse is a consenting adult, right? Meaning they either knew they were marrying a first responder and chose to marry a first responder, or chose to stay married to you when you became a first responder. And I'm a big believer in, like, people choose their situations, take abuse out of that, take all, but like, you're married to a consenting adult. I'm assuming she's a consenting adult.
So far.
But she's choosing that, right? So whether she knew she was marrying a first responder or chose to stay with you once you became a first responder, that is a choice.
Yeah.
And to be married to someone who works a 24-hour shift is a choice. And with that comes a certain understanding. And spouses are in therapy as well, right? And what they're saying is, I don't know how to help. And my feedback to them always is, stop guessing how to help. You need to ask people how you can help them. So that puts the onus on you guys to tell your spouses what you need and how they can help. And if that means, like, I had a terrible day, I'm just tired, not because it was traumatic, but my body just didn't rest correctly, then to be able to share that and say what you need.
I love it. That's great ideas. I love it. That's such good advice. Absolutely. Now, your page, your social media page, your Instagram page, you have a lot of good advice on there. Did you just said, you know what, I'm going to start posting all these clips so other people can understand the brain of the firefighter, the first responder, or just I want to make it so that people are understanding me, what my business is? Because again, your clips are fantastic. What you're doing on there is really, really cool. You don't see it very often. And I love that you have this on here for us for anybody to just go on there and maybe understand the human mind just a little bit more. How'd you come up with it? Like, you just wanted to do it?
No, I actually am really uncomfortable doing it. I started doing it because I had a patient in college who told me that she would never trust a therapist without a social media presence. And I said, that's very interesting. Why? And she said, I'm not going to sit on my couch and bare my soul to you if you don't even give me a glimpse into your life. And if you go through my Instagram, you'll find that you'll never see my husband. You will hardly ever see my son. I do try to keep it. I keep a lot of my personal life out of it to try to protect my family. But I then became a graduate professor, and I started working with grad students, and they're in their mid-20s, and they said something similar. They said, I won't go to a restaurant that doesn't have an Instagram page. I won't go to a business that doesn't have an Instagram page because I don't trust people who don't have a social media presence. So I found that people only want to see therapists who they have had some exposure to their face and their voice. Those were the two things I was told. We need to see what you look like and what you sound like before we would come and sit with you. So that's actually where it came from, and I'm quite uncomfortable doing it. But I have found that it has, when I started doing the videos on first responders, it has increased engagement from my first responder clients, and it has actually got them to come to session and say, I never thought about this, but I watched your video, and that actually sounds a lot like me. So I think it's also giving people things to think about outside of session that I'm hoping are resonating a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you gotten any blowback from the people in your field? Do they frown upon that?
It's a gray area in the field because I am allowing a glimpse into my life. That being said, there's this belief that there should be this really sterile wall between clinicians and their patients. I don't think you should become friends with your clients, right? But I think it's an interesting type of field where I'm asking you to bare your soul, and it's hard for you to trust me if you don't know anything about me. And sometimes just knowing bits and pieces, or if I share a meme that I think is funny, sometimes that allows people to get a glimpse into who you are outside of work. Because I think we're asking you to be incredibly vulnerable. And while it would be inappropriate for me to be equally as vulnerable, um, I think there's a human connection in therapy, and therapy doesn't work without the human connection.
I love it. Oh, I think it's great though. It's different. It's refreshing, to be honest with you, to see that. Because again, when I was going through therapy, she made it pretty clear that we will not associate with each other outside of these walls. If I see you at the gym, I will not come up and say hi to you. I will make sure that I might have to go to a different gym. There's all these things like I cannot associate with you at all. And but I do think it's great. I love that you're putting a face to your name, and that we all know who it is. And again, I think it's super important, obviously, that you're leaving your family members out of it, so that it can always get a little weird with clients and doctors. But I think it's fresh. I think it's something that we need, and you do it very well. I do love. You also have these topics like I'm just looking at right now, that April Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Like, you're bringing up these important topics that people need to talk about and know about. One actually, I wanted to ask you about is Are You Dating a Sociopath? How to tell by the second drink. What is that?
Yeah. So there's a company out of New York City. It's called Lectures on Tap, and they have professors come out and give lectures to bars full of people. And it started in forensics. I love the sociopathic brain. I'm really into sociopathy, not personally, but professionally. And so dark psychology has become sort of a movement. This idea of, just understanding people that are completely different from you. Online dating is a movement. And it's interesting because I do some talks on sexual consent. And when I talk to college students, I'll ask, like, when you meet somebody on Tinder, on Hinge, like, how often are you Googling their record? And no one raises their hand. And I'm saying, like, people, I worked in prison, like, they get out and date. And I'm not saying you can't date somebody without a record. You just need to know what that record is, right? Because there are some records that we're fine dating, and there's some records where you're going to end up in a skin suit. So you better Google them. But yes, I'm doing a presentation on how to gauge a sociopath while you're dating them.
That is so cool. I think my wife would love to hear that one. She's like you. She loves all these crime movies and TV shows, and I just saw that caught my eye when I was scrolling across, and I thought that was just such a neat thing that normally people don't promote. So good for you. I really like it. It's very, very cool.
Thanks.
So if anybody wants to know who Jen is it JL Weaver?
Yeah.
Okay, JL Weaver LLC on her Instagram. Again, she has some great information, and it's not just first responder stuff on here, but there's a bulk of it on there, and she's working real hard to understand the minds of first responders, and I think it's great that we have more people that are there to help us in that field to make sure that we're safe and be able to respond to the next call, and I thank you so much for being on my program to talk about this. Is super important. What kind of, if anybody's looking for help, where can they go? How can they reach out, especially in the Rhode Island area?
If they're in the Rhode Island area, they can find me. I will help you. I will help you find somebody in your town near you. I don't know, Mike, how often you've been to Rhode Island, but you can get from point A to point B anywhere in the state within an hour. But if you live in Rhode Island, anything more than 20 minutes is too far to travel for a doctor's appointment. So if people can message me, I will help you. I will recommend somebody closer to you. If you are outside of Rhode Island or even in Rhode Island, I always recommend Psychology Today. Psychology Today website has a therapist finder that you can put all sorts of filters into. and will allow you to find a therapist of maybe a gender or an age group or a location that you feel comfortable with. And it usually includes their face. So you get to see what they look like as well, which seems to be comforting to people.
It really is, to be honest with you, because it is awkward coming in and, not knowing who the person's going to be. And again, you walk in, you go, this person, as soon as you see him, nope, it's not going to work between the two of us. I can tell you that right now. So I mean, that carries a lot of weight to be able to know who they are before. Honestly, like when I'm looking for a primary care physician, I'm looking at their face too. I want to know who this person is. So it's not just the name, but I'm reading their titles, but I'm also looking at their face, and like, for whatever reason, that's just what we are. That's who we are. So I love that. So you were able to reach out to and advise people where to go, where they can get the help that they need. I love it. Man, I really enjoyed talking with you, Jen. I'm going to have you on again because there's so much more we can talk about. Do you do presentations beside the one about the psycho killers and stuff? Do you do other presentations? So I know a lot of departments usually will ask clinicians to come out and talk about like how to deal with a lot of the stresses in life. Do you do that?
Yeah, that's how it started. There's 20 departments across the state of Rhode Island that I train. I go out and do presentations on mental wellness, resiliency, substance use, relationships, how to speak to your spouse, how to process trauma. So yeah, I think part of this immersion process is getting the trainings on site with a clinician who you are seeing for more than one training, right? So stuff can kind of roll over. But yeah, so we're doing all that, suicide prevention, all of it.
That's great. And we touched on it a bit too, but you said I think it's super important that spouses also get in there and talk about what's going on. I know we talk a lot about the first responders getting the help they need, but I think the spouses, it's super important that they get in there and get the help that they need. They might not even think they need it, but once they start talking, usually those floodgates open up and realize that there were some things that were hidden deep inside that they didn't know of. Yeah. So, and you deal a lot with spouses too, correct?
Yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand. Sometimes the wife sends her husband to see me, and sometimes the wife would rather see me herself. And it's all connected though, right? My spouse is incredibly stressed out. They come home, they're really irritable. This isn't who they were a handful of years ago. They don't want to talk about it. They won't open up when I ask them. How do we make the house kind of a healthy place?
Love it. And I meant to ask you, and I completely forgot. Now I just remembered. There used to be the whole rapid eye movement, or is that still a thing?
Yeah, EMDR. EMDR is based on the concept of bilateral brain stimulation. This idea that if both sides of your brain communicate during trauma processing, that you are more likely to process trauma. And they actually just found out that the corpus callosum, I'm going to nerd out on you for a bit. The corpus callosum is the part of your brain that connects your left and right hemisphere. It's actually thinner in men, which doesn't mean that your left and right hemisphere communicate more easily. It actually means that there's less neural connections between your left and right hemisphere. So as a result, they think men are more likely to experience PTSD, not because they're exposed to more trauma, but because they may not process it accurately. EMDR allows for that bilateral stimulation. It's covered by your insurance. People think it's weird. They flash a light in front of you, click something in front of you while you process your trauma, but it stimulates both sides of your brain at the same time. And the results are tremendous. And there are thousands and thousands of articles on PubMed all about it. It's backed by science, and listen, your insurance will pay for it. If there's anything I learned about insurance, they will pay for very little. But if they will pay for EMDR, it must be because it's backed by science.
Oh man, I love that. It's a great, quick explanation of it. And I forgot to talk about that earlier because I know a lot of people talk about it, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Great. I'm so glad that we actually got to touch on that. Jen, thank you so much for being on the C.A.N. Report. This has been a great time. Again, anybody who's looking for information, please reach out to Jen. She's available on social media. She's got a lot of great information. Obviously, she is well read. She has done her homework. She knows what's going on with us. The fact that you're going into burning buildings now, wearing the gear and breathing the same air that we're breathing when we're going through those things is fantastic. And I really appreciate you actually taking taking the time to know what it feels like to go in those buildings and understand that it's not easy, and it could be kind of scary. And that means a lot for all of us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I also like to leave it too is if you guys are reaching out for anybody, I love to promote my guys. Next Rung, you can reach out to them. They have resources to help you get the help that you need. If you're not sure where to go, or you're not sure how to do an appointment, they can help you with all of that. You just got to reach out. And that's the first step, is making sure you're reaching out and getting the help that you need and contacting them. They have a peer support helpline. Text support, SUPPORT. You can for professional counseling, text counseling, and for addiction, text treatment. And they will help you out and get you where we all need to be. So make sure you're doing that. First step, it begins with you. If you're not doing it, no one else can help you. We don't know what's wrong. Jen Weaver, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you. I can't wait for people to hear about this and understand how everything triggers lack of sleep, stress, trauma, childhood trauma, all of it together. It can do some bad things to our minds, and we got to make sure we're actually talking to people and getting the rest that we need as well to make ourselves better for everybody else. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in on the C.A.N Report. You all be well. I love you. Stay safe. Mazel tov.